She wakes up with a gasp, the kind that feels like surfacing from deep underwater. But it's not the sudden inhale that stops her, it's the way her hands don't feel like her own. They rest on pristine white sheets, manicured, soft, adorned with a wedding ring that catches the morning light. She doesn't wear rings. Her stomach knots. She turns her head. The man beside her is perfect, chiseled jaw, tousled hair, the kind of easy, effortless beauty that belongs in magazine spreads. His back rises and falls in the rhythm of sleep. Her pulse pounds. Who is he? A sharp chill cuts through her spine. She scrambles out of bed, nearly tripping over her own feet. The room is pristine, too pristine. Framed photos smile from the walls, vacations, anniversaries, two people frozen in time, madly in love. Her face is in every single one. A slow, nauseating realization grips her. She has no memory of this life. The man stirs. A groggy mumble, a shift of the sheets. She freezes. Every nerve in her body screams to move, to run, to get out before he wakes and asks her a question she doesn't have an answer to. But her feet stay rooted to the floor, knees locked, breath shallow. Then he turns toward her, eyes still heavy with sleep, and smiles. "Morning, babe," he murmurs. His voice is warm, familiar. She flinches. It's small, barely noticeable, but his expression flickers, only for a second, before settling back into something soft. "You okay?" he asks, rubbing his face. Her mind scrambles for something to say, something normal. "Yeah, just woke up weird." He chuckles, stretching. "You always wake up weird." Then he pats the space beside him. "Come back to bed for a minute." Her heart slams against her ribs. Every instinct warns against it. But she forces herself to step forward, to sit on the edge of the mattress. The sheets feel expensive under her fingertips, the air thick with the scent of his cologne. He watches her, head propped on his hand, and the weight of his gaze is suffocating. Her voice is steady when she asks, "What's my name?" A pause. His brow furrows slightly, lips parting like he's about to laugh, but then he sees her expression. He sits up. "What? What's my name?" she repeats. His hesitation lasts just a beat too long. "What kind of question is that?" She doesn't blink. He exhales, raking a hand through his hair. "Emma." "Jesus, did you hit your head or something?" The name lands like a stone in her chest. "Emma." It feels foreign, artificial. "Right," she says slowly, trying it on, but it doesn't fit. "Are you messing with me?" His tone is light, but something lurks beneath it now, something cautious. She forces a small smile. "Just had a strange dream." Relief washes over his face, but her own unease only deepens. She pushes herself off the bed. "I need a shower. Want me to join?" The casual flirtation makes her stomach twist. No, it comes out sharper than intended. His eyes narrow slightly, but he doesn't press. She walks into the bathroom, locks the door, and grips the sink with both hands. The mirror is still there. So is she. Or at least, some version of her. The woman staring back has sleek, honey blonde hair, not the darker, untamed waves she remembers. Her skin is flawless, brows shaped, lips full and glossed. Expensive. Curated. The kind of face that belongs to someone with a meticulous skincare routine and a perfect life. It isn't hers. Her breath comes faster, shallow. She tears through the drawers, searching for anything familiar, an old lipstick, a perfume she recognizes, something that feels like hers. But everything is pristine, neatly arranged in a way that feels more like a display than real life. Her fingers tighten around a hairbrush. If she doesn't find some proof that she exists beyond this perfect, alien version of herself, she might start believing she really is Emma. A knock at the door. She jumps. "You good?" His voice, calm but edged with something firmer now. "Yeah," she calls back, quickly shoving the drawer shut. "Just a minute." He doesn't leave right away. She listens to his quiet presence on the other side of the door, the way the air shifts. Finally, his footsteps retreat. She exhales, gripping the counter again. This isn't her life. But if it isn't, Whose is it? The phone unlocks with her fingerprint. She stares at the screen, heart pounding, waiting for something to make sense. The wallpaper is a photo of her and him, her husband, on a yacht, golden sunlight kissing their faces, their smiles effortless. She has no memory of that day. The apps are arranged neatly, emails unread, a to-do list filled with tasks she doesn't recognize, confirm dinner reservation. Call Lydia about the fundraiser. Pick up dry cleaning. She clicks on the messages. The most recent is from Mom. Let me know how last night went. So proud of you, sweetheart. Her throat tightens. She taps on the conversation, scrolling up. It's filled with warm check-ins, encouragements, can't wait to see you Sunday. It feels real, but it isn't. She doesn't remember any of it. The next message is from Lydia. Flawless speech, babe. You own that room. Another one from Mark. Work, I need those reports by noon. Shouldn't take long. Also, drinks Friday? None of it clicks. The words feel like artifacts from someone else's existence. She navigates to the call log. Recent calls. Mom, Lydia, Mark, Eric, husband. She hesitates, then clicks on Mom, pressing the phone to her ear. It rings twice before a warm voice answers. Emma, didn't expect you to be up this early. Everything okay? Her mouth is dry. She swallows, trying to keep her voice steady. Yeah, just checking in. A pause. You sure? You sound a little off. She forces a laugh. Just tired. Her mother exhales softly. I bet. Last night must have been overwhelming. But I knew you'd be incredible. You always are. She grips the edge of the counter. Remind me again. What was last night? Another pause, this one longer. Emma. The tone is careful now. Are you feeling all right? She closes her eyes, willing herself to sound normal. Of course. Just, my head's been all over the place lately. A soft chuckle. You work too hard. But honey, the gala? The speech? All those months of planning? You don't just forget something like that. The world tilts. She latches onto the sink, struggling to breathe. Her mother's voice tightens. Emma, what's going on? She needs to get off this call. Now. Nothing. You're right, I'm just tired. I'll call you later. She hangs up before she can hear the response. The bathroom is too small, too bright, too suffocating. She stares at her reflection again, forcing herself to say the name out loud. Emma. It feels empty, like wearing a stranger's coat. A knock at the door. Firmer this time. Emma. She grips the counter harder. What? You've been in there a while. His voice is calm, but there's an edge to it now. She unlocks the door, stepping out, forcing a smile. His eyes scan her, assessing, but he doesn't push. Coffee's ready. She follows him downstairs. The kitchen is spotless, sunlight pouring through the wide glass windows, the smell of brewed coffee filling the air. He slides a mug across the counter. She watches his movements, smooth and practiced, like he's done this 100 times. Like they have. She takes a sip, throat dry. What do I do for work? He looks up, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. Are you serious? She shrugs, forcing a casual tone. Humor me. He leans against the counter, studying her. You're the head of marketing at Brighton and Company. You've been there for 6 years. You gave a huge speech last night at the gala, raised nearly $2 million for the foundation. He cocks his head. You really don't remember? Her grip tightens around the mug. A phone buzzes between them. His. He glances at the screen, then back at her. I have to take this. He steps into the next room, voice lowering as he answers. She takes the chance. She moves quickly, silently, opening the drawers, searching. Something, anything that doesn't belong. She finds a stack of documents, flips through them. Bank statements, contracts, paperwork with her name signed at the bottom in a handwriting that doesn't feel like hers. Then, at the very bottom of the stack, something different. A medical document. Her stomach drops. Neurological evaluation, Dr. Stephen Patel. The notes underneath are brief, clinical. Patient exhibits symptoms of dissociative amnesia. Episodes of confusion regarding identity and environment. Memory inconsistencies reported by spouse. Further evaluation recommended. The paper trembles in her hands. A shadow moves in the doorway. What are you doing? His voice is calm, but the weight of it sinks into the air. She slowly places the document back, turning to face him. I was looking for a pen. Silence. Then, he smiles. But his eyes stay cold. Let's go out today, he says smoothly. Fresh air might help. Her pulse pounds. She nods. And for the first time since waking up in this life, she realizes she might not be able to leave. The moment they step outside, she memorizes everything. The driveway, the street name on the corner, the rows of identical houses with manicured lawns. If she needs to run, she has to know where she is. The air is crisp, the sun bright, but none of it feels real. She walks beside him, keeping her movements natural, forcing easy breaths. We'll grab lunch at Bella's, he says. You love their pasta. She nods, filing the information away. Every detail matters. If she really belongs to this life, she should recognize places. But the neighborhood, the storefronts, the cafe they step into, it's all unfamiliar. The inside of Bella's is warm, filled with low chatter and the smell of fresh bread. A waitress approaches, smiling at him first. Table for two, Mr. Calloway? He nods. She freezes. That name, Calloway, she doesn't know it. He never mentioned their last name. It should mean nothing, but her stomach knots anyway. They sit near the window. He orders without asking her, confident, practiced. She waits until the waitress leaves before leaning in slightly. Where did we meet? His expression barely shifts, but the pause is there. He stirs his coffee, watching her over the rim. You really don't remember anything, do you? She holds his gaze. His jaw tightens, just a little. Then he smiles, easy, effortless. At a conference. 5 years ago. You were working for a different firm back then. I saw you across the room, and I knew I had to talk to you. The words are smooth, rehearsed. Too perfect. She nods slowly. And then what? He tilts his head, studying her. We talked all night. You told me about your dreams, how you wanted to run your own agency one day. You hated red wine, but you drank it anyway because you wanted to impress a client. You laughed at all my jokes, even the bad ones. He leans back, watching her reaction. Sound familiar? It doesn't. Not a single word of it. She forces a small smile. Yeah. I think it's coming back. His fingers tap against the table. Good. The food arrives, but she barely touches it. Her mind races, piecing things together. She needs more information. What happened to my old job? You left. Brighton made you an offer and you couldn't refuse. She stabs at her salad with her fork. Did I love it there? He watches her carefully. You worked hard. Not an answer. She sets her fork down, fingers pressing into the table. Tell me something. Her voice stays steady. If I hadn't woken up this morning feeling off, would you have told me about that doctor's report? A flicker of something passes through his expression. Then, like a switch, it's gone. He exhales, setting his napkin down. Emma. The way he says it, low and firm, makes her stomach twist. I've been patient. I've tried to give you space, but this, he gestures vaguely. You're spiraling. And I get it. You've been under a lot of stress. But I need you to trust me. She grips her lap under the table. I want to. Good. He leans forward slightly. Then stop questioning everything. You're safe. You're happy. You have a good life. Just let yourself believe it. The pressure in her chest tightens. Then, across the room, she sees something. A man, mid-40s, dark jacket, seated at the bar. He's not looking at them, not directly. But she swears she's seen him before. Her pulse jumps. She grabs her phone, clicking into her call log, scrolling. And there it is. The number from last night. The only call she didn't recognize. She looks up again. The man shifts slightly, turning just enough for their eyes to meet. And this time, there's no doubt. He knows her. And he's waiting for something. She pushes her chair back. I need the bathroom. He doesn't stop her, but she feels his eyes on her as she walks away. She moves past the restrooms, toward the side exit. The man at the bar stands at the same time. If she's wrong about him, this could go badly. If she's right, she doesn't get the chance to decide. A hand grabs her wrist, firm but not aggressive. She whips around, ready to pull away, but the man shakes his head once. Don't, he mutters. Just act normal. Walk with me. Her whole body is shaking, but she does. They step outside into the alley beside the restaurant. She yanks her wrist free. Who are you? His jaw tightens. You don't remember me? No, she hisses. Should I? His shoulders rise and fall with a slow breath. I was your emergency contact. Everything inside her stops. That can't be right, she says, even as something inside her cracks open. My husband would be my contact. The man shakes his head. You're not married. Her stomach drops. That man in there? The stranger glances toward the restaurant. He's not your husband. And this life? It's not yours. She doesn't move. The weight of his words crushes the air between them. The sounds of the city, the distant hum of traffic, the muffled conversations from the cafe, blur into nothing. Her pulse pounds in her ears, her body frozen in place. He watches her carefully, his face tense. I know this is a lot, but you need to listen to me. You're in danger. Her breath is unsteady. That's not possible. His expression hardens. Think about it. What do you actually remember before this morning? She opens her mouth, but nothing comes. Not a single moment, not a single memory beyond waking up in that house, beside a man she's told is her husband, in a life that's supposed to be hers. Her voice catches. He steps closer, lowering his voice. You went missing 6 weeks ago. The words hit like a physical blow. She stares at him, shaking her head. No. I filed the report myself. He pulls something from his jacket, a folded piece of paper. He shoves it into her hands. She hesitates, then unfolds it. It's a missing persons report. The grainy photo attached to it is of her, but the name printed underneath isn't Emma Calloway. It's Lena Carter. Her stomach twists violently. This isn't. It is. His voice is sharp. That man in there? He's not your husband. He's the one who made you disappear. The words don't make sense. They can't. But the missing space in her mind, the constant feeling that something is wrong, the way Eric, if that's even his name, looks at her like he's waiting for her to break, it all fits too perfectly. She grips the paper so hard it crumples. Why would someone do this to me? He exhales, glancing toward the alley's entrance. I don't have all the answers. But I've been looking for you since the day you vanished. We don't have much time. If he figures out you're gone, he'll. The door to the cafe swings open. She jerks back instinctively. Eric steps outside, his eyes locking onto hers instantly. His expression doesn't change, but something shifts in his posture, something cold, calculating. He takes in the man beside her. His gaze darkens. A slow, measured smile. Everything okay here? She struggles to form words. Her body screams at her to run, to trust the man who just shattered her reality, but fear roots her in place. The stranger stiffens slightly beside her, but his voice remains calm. We were just talking. Eric's smile doesn't falter. He tilts his head slightly. I don't believe we've met. The man hesitates. That split-second pause. Eric notices it, and that's when she sees it. He already knows who this man is. Eric shifts his attention back to her, his expression unreadable. Come on, babe. Let's go home. Every muscle in her body locks. The stranger moves first. She's not going anywhere with you. Eric exhales sharply, as if annoyed. I really hoped we wouldn't have to do this here. The moment he reaches into his pocket, the stranger grabs her arm. Run. She doesn't hesitate. She shoves past Eric and bolts, her feet pounding against the pavement, the stranger close behind her. She hears Eric curse, then the sound of fast footsteps following. People on the street barely react as they push through, too lost in their own worlds to notice the panic in hers. She doesn't know where she's going, only that she can't stop. The missing pieces in her head don't matter anymore. The only thing that matters is escaping before Eric, before the man who stole her life, catches up. The streets blur. Her lungs burn. The city moves around her in fragments, faces turning, car horns blaring, the rush of wind against her skin. Footsteps hammer the pavement behind her, fast, closing in. She pushes harder, dodging past a couple, nearly colliding with a cyclist. The stranger, her only link to the truth, keeps pace beside her. Left, he snaps. She doesn't think. She turns sharply into a narrow alley, nearly slipping on the slick pavement. A metal fence looms ahead, too high to climb. Dead end. No, she gasps, spinning around. Eric is already there. He moves with eerie calm, adjusting his sleeves, his breathing steady. Behind him, two men block the exit, dark suits, blank expressions. Not random bystanders. Not police. She backs away, her pulse hammering. The stranger steps in front of her, his stance shifting, ready for a fight. "You're making this worse for yourself," he says, his voice sharp. Eric exhales, shaking his head. "Lena," he says evenly. "Come here." The name hits her like a slap. He's never called her that. Not once. She stiffens, and his jaw twitches. "You remember now," he says. It's not a question. She doesn't answer. One of the men shifts slightly. A signal. The stranger tenses. "Run," he mutters under his breath. There's nowhere to go. The first punch lands fast. The stranger blocks it, countering with a sharp jab to the ribs. The second man lunges. The alley erupts into chaos, grappling, fists connecting, grunts of pain. The stranger is good, but he's outnumbered. A fist slams into his gut. He stumbles. Eric doesn't move. He watches. Her body screams at her to do something, but she's frozen, trapped between panic and disbelief. The stranger struggles, but they're too strong. One of the men grips his arms, yanking him back. The other drives a fist into his ribs, then again, harder. He chokes out a breath, knees buckling. Eric steps forward. Enough. The men release him. He slumps against the wall, blood on his lip, breathing heavy. Eric turns to her. "Are you done?" She shakes her head, heart slamming against her ribs. "Why are you doing this?" His expression softens as if the question actually wounds him. "You were never supposed to know." She stares at him, waiting for an answer that makes sense. Eric sighs. "We spent too much time building this. Too much effort making it perfect. And now, because of him," his eyes flick to the bleeding man on the ground, "you're confused." Her stomach twists. This isn't real. His gaze sharpens. It is real. He gestures around them. Your life. Your home. The job. The friends. The memories. He takes a slow step forward. It's yours. Her hands clench. You made me into someone I'm not. Eric exhales through his nose, his patience wearing thin. "Lena," he says again, quieter this time. "You don't want to go back to the way things were." Her breath shudders. "What was I before?" He watches her, weighing something. Then, finally, miserable. The word slams into her. Eric takes another step, closing the space between them. "You were lost. You hated your life. You wanted an escape. We gave you one." She shakes her head, the world tilting. "Who's we?" He doesn't answer. Behind him, the two men are still watching. Waiting. The stranger coughs, struggling to sit up. His voice is hoarse. "He's lying to you." Eric doesn't even look at him. "Come home, Lena." The words curl around her, careful, controlled. A final offer. She glances at the stranger. His eyes lock onto hers, desperate, pleading. Blood drips from his lip. He's lost the fight, but he's still here. Still fighting for her. And Eric, calm, measured Eric, is still waiting for her to surrender. She takes a slow breath. Then, she makes her choice. She steps toward Eric. His shoulders relax slightly, just enough. He thinks he's won. She keeps her breath steady, her body still. The men behind him don't move. They don't expect her to fight. She looks down, just for a second. The alley ground is cracked, uneven. A broken brick, jagged at the edges, lies near her foot. She moves fast. She lunges, snatching the brick and swinging hard. It connects with Eric's temple. His head snaps sideways, his body staggering. A sharp grunt of pain escapes his throat. The impact sends a shock through her arm, but she doesn't stop. She shoves him backward with all her strength and bolts. Shouting erupts behind her. Footsteps pound against the pavement. They're coming after her. She runs, cutting through the alley and into the street. Cars swerve, horns blare. A cyclist yells as she nearly crashes into him. She doesn't slow down. A hand catches her arm. She twists, heart slamming against her ribs, ready to fight, but it's the stranger. His grip is weak, his face pale, but his voice is urgent. This way. She doesn't question it. They tear down another street, past rows of shops, weaving through crowds. Behind them, Eric's men are closing in. An open doorway. The stranger shoves her inside. The door slams. Darkness. Heavy breathing. The scent of dust and old wood. They're in some kind of storage room, cramped and cluttered with stacked chairs and unused furniture. Outside, footsteps rush past. The men keep running. They haven't seen them slip inside. Silence stretches. The stranger leans against the wall, wincing as he grips his ribs. She's shaking, her body caught between exhaustion and adrenaline. He exhales. That was reckless. She glares at him. I just saved your life. He gives a weak smirk, but it fades quickly. We don't have much time. His voice is hoarse. They won't stop. You understand that, right? She swallows hard. Then tell me everything. No more cryptic half answers. No more waiting. He nods, wiping blood from his mouth. You were part of a program. High-level psychological conditioning. Identity reconstruction. People pay a lot of money to erase their pasts, to become something new. Her stomach twists. I never agreed to that. His expression darkens. You did. The words send ice through her veins. He watches her carefully. 6 months ago, you came to me. You were desperate. You wanted out of your life, but you didn't just want to disappear. You wanted to forget. She shakes her head. No. You paid for it. Signed the contract. You chose this. She stumbles back, gripping the wall. None of it makes sense. You weren't supposed to wake up, he says. Not like this. Something went wrong. Maybe it was the process. Maybe it was something in you fighting back. But Eric, he didn't want you to remember. He was supposed to maintain the illusion. She grips her arms, trying to steady herself. Why are you helping me? His jaw tightens. Because I was the one who erased you. The air leaves her lungs. I worked for them. I built the memory conditioning process, designed the transitions, rewired identities. But I never questioned it. Not until you. He looks away. You were different. You didn't just want to disappear. You wanted to erase yourself. And I let you. Her hands tremble. Who was I before? His voice is quiet. You really want to know? She isn't sure. He exhales. We need to go. Now. Outside, footsteps return. They've been found. The footsteps outside stop. No voices, no movement. Just silence. She holds her breath, heart hammering, waiting for something, anything to happen. The stranger beside her tenses, pressing his back against the wall. His fingers twitch like he's counting down seconds. Then the door handle rattles. She reacts before thinking. She scans the room, boxes, metal shelves, a stack of folded chairs, grabs the first thing she sees. A rusted screwdriver, long and sharp. It's not much, but it's something. The stranger motions for her to move. They creep toward the opposite side of the room, where another door leads to the back alley. He reaches for the handle, but it won't budge. Locked. The door behind them creaks open. They don't wait. The stranger throws his shoulder into the back door. The frame groans, wood splintering, but it holds. He curses under his breath, hitting it again, harder this time. Footsteps enter the room behind them. Eric's voice is calm. You're making this harder than it needs to be. She grips the screwdriver tighter. The The stranger slams into the door one last time. It bursts open, spilling them into the alley. Cold air, open space, freedom, if they can make it. They run. The alley twists and narrows, dumpsters lining the walls, puddles slowing their steps. She risks a glance back. 2 men are chasing them, gaining ground. A chain-link fence looms ahead, tall and rusted. The stranger gets there first, gripping the metal and hauling himself up. She follows, feet slipping on the cold steel, hands burning as she climbs. Behind them, the men reach the fence. One starts climbing. The other pulls something from his coat. A gun. She reaches the top just as the first shot cracks through the air. She drops, hitting the ground hard, pain jolting up her legs. The stranger grabs her wrist, dragging her forward. They tear through another alley, out onto a street. Cars blur past, too many people, too much movement. He pulls her into a crowd. Don't stop. She forces herself to keep going, weaving through bodies, heart slamming against her ribs. Behind them, the men don't follow immediately. Too public. Too many witnesses. But they're there, watching, waiting. The stranger pulls her into a small cafe. It's quiet, half empty. A waitress looks up, uninterested. They slide into a booth, both breathing hard. For a long moment, neither speaks. Then he leans forward, voice low. We don't have much time. They'll regroup. You need to decide now. She grips the edge of the table, fingers numb. Decide what? His gaze doesn't waver. If you want to know everything. Her throat tightens. You already told me. He shakes his head. Not all of it. She swallows hard. Then tell me. He exhales. You weren't just running from your old life. You were running from something specific. He hesitates. Someone. She goes still. You were in danger before this even started. That's why you came to me. That's why you wanted to disappear completely. But something went wrong. You weren't supposed to wake up yet. Eric wasn't supposed to be the one watching you. He's part of something bigger. Her pulse pounds in her ears. Who was I running from? His jaw tightens. I don't know. That's what we need to find out. She grips the table, mind spinning. None of this makes sense. None of it feels real. But the fear, the chase, the pieces falling into place, it's real enough. Outside, a black car slows near the window. The stranger sees it first. He stands. We need to go. She doesn't hesitate. They slip out the back just as the car door opens.